There's the old joke about someone asking directions how to get to Carnegie Hall and being told, practice, practice. In a new version, if someone asks how to become a successful movie director, whose early films are cult triumphs and whose most recent one has been hailed as the hottest film in the country, grossing $8 million in its first 5 days, you wouldn't expect the answer to be, go to Pittsburgh and stay there. But that is exactly what our guest on Lyceum did. He left the Bronx and he came to Pittsburgh in the late 50s to study at CMU, and he stayed. He made Night of the Living Dead in 1968. It became a cult classic and allowed him to continue making movies and a career. His most recent film, Creepshow, is scary, funny, and successful with big names and big box office, but still relying on local talent on and off screen. There's no guessing game involved. He is George Romero. And I guess the first question is, why did you, once you came to Pittsburgh, I can understand that, you came to CMU to study, but why did you stay here to make movies?
I liked it here, first of all. I didn't, you know, it's funny, when I was in school, I never thought of making movies as a career. When I was growing up, I guess, I'd always seemed like the people that made movies were elves that lived in magic land somewhere, you know, on the planet of Hollywood. Yeah. And I never thought seriously that a person could go and do that, you know. That was magic, and that was unachievable, unattainable. But I always wanted to play around with it, and I guess I always have played around with it from the time I was a kid. Played around with the medium. I got my hands on 8mm movie cameras that my uncles had, and was always horsing around with it idly. And when I first started here in Pittsburgh with friends of mine that were at Carnegie Mellon, we were all doing it idly. We were just playing around with something that we enjoyed doing. And I think none of us initially were really thinking seriously that we were starting to build a career or build a business out of it. And a couple of years later, we set up, in fact, a company to do commercials and industrial films and like that here in Pittsburgh. And because this is a big corporate market, we got some jobs. There were advertising agencies here, and it was kind of being in the right place at the right time. It was right when people stopped shooting live television commercials, you know, pouring beer between the innings of the ball game and like that. Yeah. And film was, at that time, being used, just beginning to be used as a medium for creative expression in that form, in the form of television commercials and political campaigns and whatever else you can do with film on television. That's not the feature program material. And that's really how we started. And because of developing relationships with Pittsburghers, technicians in Pittsburgh, labs in Pittsburgh, and things like that, and having friends here that were all working together toward the same goal, we stayed. And we made Night of the Living Dead as a bunch of friends who got together to try to make a feature-length movie. And it was just circumstance and luck that it went out, number one, and got distributed, and number two, that it was successful. Because it was successful, really, immediately. And, in fact, the only money that it ever returned was in its first 8 or 9 months of release, when it went out into neighborhood theaters and drive-ins across the country. And then all of the other stuff that happened to it, its afterlife, and when the critics discovered it, and all that, really has not meant anything financially.
But it's meant a lot in terms of people recognizing who you are.
Yeah, it has done that. I mean, there's no question that that's been the biggest single break. I mean, everyone says that you have to have that break, and Night of the Living Dead was really that break for me.
Before we go much farther, maybe we can show a little clip from Night of the Living Dead, because if you haven't seen it, you will have a chance now. And to set the plot, for some unknown reason, in Night of the Living Dead, the dead are rising from their graves and feeding on the living. A diverse group of people have taken refuge in a farmhouse and find their battle lines have been redrawn. In this scene, the men begin to argue over where to hide, but are really fighting for control.
The cellar. The cellar, there's only one door, right? Just one door, that's all we have to protect. Tom and I fixed it so it locks and boards from the inside. But up here, all these windows, why, we never know where they were going to hit us next.
You got a point, Mr. Cooper. But down in the cellar, there's no place to run to. I mean, if they did get in, there'd be no back exit. We'd be done for. We can get out of here if we have to. And we got windows to see what's going on outside. But down there with no windows, if a rescue party did come, we wouldn't even know it.
But the cellar is the strongest place.
The cellar is a death trap.
I don't know, Mr. Cooper. I think he's right. You know how many's out there?
I don't know. Maybe 6 or 7.
Look, you two can do whatever you like. I'm going back down to the cellar, and you better decide. Because I'm going to board up that door, and I'm not going to unlock it again no matter what happens.
Now, wait a minute, Mr. Cooper.
No, I'm not going to wait. I've made my decision, now you make yours.
Now, wait a minute. Let's think about this. We can make it to the cellar if we have to. And if we do decide to stay down there, we'll need some things from up here. So let's at least consider this a while.
If you box yourself in the cellar and those things get in the house, you've had it. At least up here you have a fighting chance.
Yeah, it looks like about 8 or 10 out there now.
There's more than there were. There are a lot out back, too.
Why were you laughing as you watched that?
Part of the experience is to laugh, I think. It's very hard to take horror seriously. That's been my attitude towards it all along. Most of my films, there are some scary sequences in Night of the Living Dead. But there are also some things that are really played for laughs, cornball dialogue and all that. And Dawn of the Dead and some of the things that I did later are really overtly funny. I mean, they're just, in fact, Dawn of the Dead is slapstick. I consider it to be slapstick humor. And I think that really is part of the experience. People that love the genre, people that are really into horror, will sit around and tell each other, but I saw this movie, man, and you know what happened? And they're laughing all the way, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm laughing all the way when we're making one of these. To me, it's a lot of fun. It's a roller coaster. It's like an amusement park ride. It's like a laugh in the dark, which is fun, and it's meant to be fun. And at its root somewhere is that kind of fun. It's differentiated from the slasher kind of horror or something like The Exorcist, which is intends to be traumatic. But tends to, I think, the intention to traumatize. Alien is a traumatizing film. Jaws is a traumatizing film. I mean, I could see where Jaws to a child could really create fears of, you know, never going to go into ocean water and things like that. It's traumatizing. But fantasy horror, the supernatural, ghosts and goblins and things like that, to me is funny.
But isn't a lot of what you make is very explicit, gory?
That's another side of it. Yes, I mean, but that's another layer, I think. That's Grand Guignol. Grand Guignol is funny, I think. People that love it, people who are not bothered by it, don't take it seriously. It's not really traumatizing. You know, it's balletic in a curious way, I think. It's not as traumatizing as something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or The Last House on the Left, where it's one-on-one human violence, and you know, or any of these slasher films, which are where the intention is to traumatize you, and where the message seems to be that man has a blackened soul, and you can't trust man, you can't trust your fellow man.
And that isn't your message. What is your message?
Well, I guess if there is a message, or there's some thought in the zombie films anyway, which is more societal. It's kind of social satire, if you will, particularly in Dawn of the Dead. But both of the zombie films and the third one, if and when we make it, really deal with one society swallowing another society, in this case, literally.
Yes.
And does that revolution really change the behavior pattern? And hopefully over the course of the 3 parts of the story, which I have thought of it always as a trilogy, we'll find out that it really doesn't change. Things kind of come back to the way they were anyway, that the revolution hasn't meant all that much, and that the fear of being swallowed up by some new societal order is not, that we have this irrational fear of it, and that, well, it's very hard. I mean, we could do 20 minutes on it. We have an irrational fear of being swallowed into a new order with new thoughts and ideas, and that's really what worries us the most. And it's kind of just the fear of the unknown, you know. Then on the surface of those films is a whole other thing that's going on, which is a fun horror movie. And the Grand Guignol is another side of it. But even practitioners of Grand Guignol, people go to Grand Guignol Theater and laugh and hoot, and it's a very bawdy place.
Do you think it's cathartic? I mean, do you think it's really...
Oh, I think there's something about it that's cathartic, yeah. And especially in today's, I mean, we're so afraid today in this country, which is, I think, why things have gotten more and more explicit and why people are more and more willing to participate in that and hoot and holler at it. I think when we go to the movies or go to any entertainment form or listen to music, if it moves us emotionally, that somehow is confirming of our humanity. If it makes you laugh, if it makes you cry, if it makes you be startled or afraid, those are involuntary human responses that confirm our humanity. And we don't get that in life. We don't get that when we're dealing with each other. We're not allowed to show our fears. We're not allowed to cry if we're men, you know. There are a lot of kind of mores that keep that stuff down. Whereas you go to a movie and it's a very safe place to experience those things and to let them out.
That's when I saw Creepshow, which we're going to see a little clip from later. I was in a theater where obviously some of the people near me had seen it already, were bringing their friends, and they just couldn't wait to share some things coming up with them. They said, "Oh, you're going to love this. Where do you see this?" And maybe it was that too.
I think that's what it is. It's a communal. It's okay to do those things there, and it gives you an opportunity to do them. I mean, you can be scared, startled, jump out of your chair, scream, and it's not embarrassing. It's perfectly okay. It's why you're there. It's why everybody went. And it's fun that way. It's like a laugh in the dark or a roller coaster ride. Safe scares.
Yeah.
It's being able to experience those human emotions in a safe context. It's why people like tearjerkers or comedies or anything that brings up some of those responses that are getting to be more and more rare in our real lives, you know, in actuality. So I don't think it's peculiar to horror. Yeah.
Well, in fact, all of your films, even though you're the master of the horror film, or called the master of the horror film.
Thank you.
The other films that you have done, many of them people have not seen, but one that they're going to be able to see on home box office in the next couple of months is Nightriders. And we can see, maybe you should set up what Nightriders is, and then I will read my little intro.
Okay. Nightriders is not a horror film at all. It's about a group of people who are celebrating the medieval experience. They have a kind of a traveling Renaissance fair. And the main attraction of the fair is a jousting tournament, only it's not done on horseback, it's done on motorcycles. And they'd stage this as a troupe of traveling athletes, daredevil athletes. And that's the main attraction at the fair. But they also at the fair sell, they are artisans and craftspeople, and they sell their wares. And they actually live a medieval code. They live with a king and with a whole set of, a whole order of fealty. And they live in tents and trailers and travel around the country trying to live by this code of chivalry and honesty. And they, of course, wind up getting entrapped by, on the one hand, loving this, and it's working for them internally, but they find it harder and harder to interact with the rest of the world. Because the pressures of the rest of the world keep saying that you can't do them things, can't be that honest, you can't, and so forth.
Okay, in this story of Society of Modern Day Knights, who travel the countryside living their fantasies and pleading the cause of truth, the scene we're about to look at, the king confronts a promoter who hopes to commercialize their group And then the king turns to his queen for support.
I didn't order this!
Lynn, I want to talk to you.
I wouldn't take it personally, Joe. You know how talent feels about agents.
Chris is a lunatic! Look at this! I came all the way out here to talk to him. The man does not work for me!
Ooh, I wouldn't worry about it, Joe. This one's much better looking.
It can't be done, Lynn. This can't be done.
I took a major chance in my life to do this. I just gotten to the point where I'd given up on fantasies. I gave up on fantasies a long time ago. And then you show up. With this fantasy, intense dream. I wanted you, not your dream. Enough of that dream rubbed off on me. I'm vulnerable again. And now you tell me it can't be done? I could have told you that 2 years ago.
Two years. You're still here.
I'm here. I don't know if it's because of you anymore, Billy, but I'm here.
They had a code that they lived by, but some people who worked with you said you're very much like that you have a code, and Nightriders is really about you.
I don't know if it actually is. I mean, if it is, it was subconscious. I wrote the script very much in accordance with the way I feel. So in that sense, it's part of me. I mean, it reflects my views in that, because it's something that I wrote. So if it does connect at all to the way I operate, then that's a good sign. I mean, I'm satisfied with that. That at least I'm. I don't want to say practicing what I preach, or I don't want to make it sound like that. It's not like that, but I never thought of it really as being about me. It's just my thoughts about honesty and how honesty fits or doesn't fit in today's world.
Is it easier to be honest in Pittsburgh?
I think it is. I don't think that the politics, particularly in this business where politics plays an important part, a huge part, is less meaningful. It's being geographically separated from our financing sources is very important, and fighting for that independence. Not the creative controls are really not where it's at. I mean, there's a lot of talk about creative controls and everyone fighting for creative controls, and what that really means is financial control. The only reason that a studio doesn't want to give a director final cut isn't because they think they can do it better than him. It's because they're afraid that he might pull a Cimino and deliver a 4-hour movie and they won't have the right to cut it. That's really what it's about. It comes down to finances. If you have a reputation, it's not that they're really reluctant to give you final cut or anything like that. Or they're very worried that all of a sudden you're going to turn around and end the movie tragically when they think that, you know, people are buying tickets for a happy ending movie or whatever. And they just don't want you to be able to change the script. Basically, it's pretty easy to make a deal on the creative side based on a script, if you can do all your fighting up front. And if the script is approved by everybody, and I've seen people go through and initial every page and all that, then nobody's going to fight with you for execution of that, or is going to want to change it after the fact or anything like that. It's usually that they just don't want you to change it, and they don't want you to run long, and it always has financial ramifications, so it really is financial control. And my partner, Richard, has supported me in letting me stay here, because most of my friends, my wife is from Pittsburgh, and her family lives here, and most of my friends and people that I work with live here. And there hasn't really been any reason to move out. And my partner has been able to support all of us financially and fight to get the financial controls as well as my battle on the other side to keep as many of the creative controls as possible. And we've been able to just sort of go in, make the deals, and bring the project home and do it here. And there really just hasn't been any reason to leave. And there's much less interference. Once we go there and sort of bring the basket back home, very few people show up. You know, maybe they'll come in once or twice during the shoot. I don't know whether they just don't want to come to Pittsburgh or what it's about, but they don't show up. I mean, and that's an important factor. They just leave us alone. There also is a very important thing about delivering on time and delivering on budget and all that, which we've consistently proven that we can do, which is not, you know, it's nothing that I can claim for myself. I mean, I'm always fighting for more time on the set. It has to do with this whole team of people here that, and all the people that we work with on the creative side and on the technical side from Pittsburgh. I'd say that 90% of our staff is Pittsburgh-based people that live full-time in Pittsburgh and either work here or at Westinghouse or at some of the other facilities here in town, and that care about what they're doing. I mean, really care about what they're doing, rather than a pickup staff on a studio lot somewhere that is really just there as a 9-to-5er that doesn't even know the name of the movie they're working on today.
So you really do have a camaraderie among the people you're working with.
I think so, yeah. I mean, to a greater extent. I'm sure it's no different than what goes on here, and it is different than what goes on the lot, on the big-time lot, where that's really like you don't know who you're going to get. You don't know who's in the grid today. You don't know who's in, and it's just a team of stringers that are together to provide the basic technical unit. And there's a big difference. There's a big difference when you have people that care about the project, know about the project, bother to read the script.
How do you bring then names and attract them to come here? How do you make that attractive?
That's really no problem. Well, of course, money plays a part in that, but we've always found that, in other words, I don't think we didn't buy the Creepshow cast, for example, totally. We made them offers, and they were willing to come in and do it, and once they came in and did it, I think everyone had a good time. I don't think there was any real reluctance. They knew that it was going to get major distribution. It was just a different way of working. And they've worked, it's really just like doing location work or something like that.
We're going to see a really quick clip from Creepshow, and our time is running out. The story begins with a family arguing over a trashy magazine their son Billy has been reading. Billy's cruel father has just thrown away his horror comic book, and Billy vows revenge.
That takes care of that.
Stan, don't you think you were, well, a little hard on him?
You see that crap? All that horror crap? Things coming out of crates and eating people? Dead people coming back to life? People turning into weeds, for Christ's sake?
Well, yes, I did, but
Well, you want him reading that stuff?
Well, no, but...
All right, then. I took care of it. That's why God made fathers, babe. That's why God made fathers.
I hope you rot in hell.
Did you read a lot of comic books when you were growing up?
I loved them. I read a bunch of them. The animation, by the way, is a local animator, based on some Jack Kamen drawings. He was one of the artists for EC, but even the animation was done locally. And of course, Tom Savini lives here, and he's gone on to do quite a lot of other stuff. He's really
special effects and all that.
He's a special effects makeup wizard.
The wizard. Yes, excuse me. He is certainly a wizard of that.
And the designers, Cletus and Barbara Anderson, who do, I know, a lot of other work here. And the major creative forces really are Pittsburgh Pittsburgh-based Pittsburgh people. And I guess if there's any banner that we wave, it's that you can do it that way, that you really don't have to produce just in L.A. or New York, that the middle of the country has a lot of talent, and so why not do it here?
Have you been offered the presidency of U.S. Steel yet? I mean, I heard that you were up for that, George. George Romero has been called undoubtedly the most important regional filmmaker working in the U.S. And you can see his films. You can see Creepshow. Thanks, George, for coming by.
Thank you, Mary. It's been really great.
You can see Creepshow at your neighborhood, at your downtown, at your Cinemet and around theater. And on home box office, as we said, you can see Nightriders in the next few months. George Romero, locally and around the country, we are proud of you. Some other things are happening in Pittsburgh right now. There is an exhibit called Building a House, which is at the Gimbels Mellon Square, and it's the first exhibit of the Pittsburgh Children's Museum, which is going to be opening at the old post office in June of 1983. But this is a first exhibit, a hands-on experience for 4 to 8-year-olds. 9 activities connected with building a house, 11:30 to 3:30 daily, 10 to 4 Saturday, 12:30 to 3:30 on Sunday. There is an exhibit called Kid Show at the Blatant Image Gallery, photographic exhibit for children. That's at Forbes Avenue in Oakland through January 14th. Fun. Kids take pictures and have their pictures taken. Another kids activity that is happening because Christmas and Hanukkah are here and kids a good time to do things with them. Miniature Railroad and Village at the Buell Science Center through February 27, 1983. Pittsburgh Holiday Tradition. You can see Western Pennsylvania, turn of the century, 6 Lionel trains, 1,000 figurines in the city and country going around. Next week, a special holiday treat. Our guest on Lyceum is artist Mary Shaw Moronic, who has an artistic opinion on most subjects, and also next week, a special Christmas commentary by comedian Barbara Russell. I want to thank George Romero, and I want to urge you to see his movies and have a good, healthy scare while you're at it.
Was made possible by your local